Yeah, I know where the mute. I know where the mute button is, and I know where the moot button is, and I'm gonna hit them. I'm gonna hit them both, and only pipe in if I have something to say. Nice to hear your voices this morning.
All right, thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you. All right. I guess we're getting started here. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the Democracy in a Box ongoing civil conversation, and we're talking about sustainability, and we're talking about specifically last week we talked about a way to sort of narrow the focus, and Michelle Thatcher presented a great sort of subtopic within sustainability, and that is political responsibility, individual political responsibility, and corporate political responsibility. And so that's going to be the subject of today, although we can, feel free to bring up anything, loosely related to that. After this week, we are probably going to open up at least part of the conversation to any topics. We would like to make this a space where people can come and talk about what they're passionate about, what's meaningful to them, and if you'll all forgive me, I'll close my eyes so I can focus better. We really want this to be a space where we can come and have civil conversation. And when I think about, why is civil conversation so relevant or helpful or meaningful, I think about all the time that Don has spent having civil conversations with me. And I think about a few years ago when I was really not very interested in voting, and I didn't really see much relevance for it with the world I was wanting to create, voting in our current system. And I got to talk with Don and have civil conversations with him where he really listened to my feelings around that. And he shared what he was passionate about. And then, over time, we're here to this place where I am pretty excited about voting. I enjoyed, voting in the local elections recently, and enjoyed, I enjoy doing research about them. And I, of course, would, still like to do more research. But I guess, my point is that that's something exciting to me now. That's something I'm engaged with. And I don't think I would have, I wouldn't have become engaged through like a get out the vote campaign. I wouldn't have all the mailers and the letters I received don't, really sway me very much, or the TV ads. And I would have been very unlikely to attend an event related to voting. And so, here was a way that, here was a way where I could become engaged, and there wouldn't have really been that opportunity without civil conversation, without, someone, listening and encouraging me to share my feelings and my perspectives, and sharing their own. So this is why I feel like civil conversation is at the root of all of the change that we want to make and see, because we, it's an opportunity to influence people in a very significant way. And so for me, I get a lot out of civil conversation at this point. I get a lot out of talking with people and sharing about different perspectives, different points of view, and allowing people to influence me and sharing the things I'm passionate about as well. So and this goes back to the word sustainability. What I'm interested in is, how do we make a sustainable civil conversation? How do we make a civil conversation that people want to return to and that people want to show up to? And so that's where I will be excited for feedback from all of you. I invite you to, talk throughout the conversation today about any insights or observations you have. And I would invite you to also, I'm happy to just talk with you at any point about civil conversation, about how do we create conversation that is attractive to people, that brings people in and keeps them coming back. Because I think, I sort of feel like that's what we need to do in order to bring people together, create the change that we want to see in the world. And so if you have any ideas, and for you, personally, I would just ask, like, what would make something like this satisfying to you? What would make this fulfilling and satisfying to you? What would be something that would be worth your time to show up to repeatedly? What would be something you would be excited to invite other people to? And I would say there are no wrong answers, because we could always, with Democracy in a Box, we could always try a different experiment. If it doesn't fit in, if your idea doesn't fit into exactly what we're doing here, you could talk with us and we could say, oh, that's a great idea for an event or a conversation. Let's set that up and see how that goes. So I think that's what I wanted to say about civil conversation and about the event. As far as today goes, I think everyone on the call is very familiar with civil conversation. Some of the, we all have the idea of that for the purpose of kind of keeping the conversation flowing. You don't have to participate. You don't have to speak up. You are welcome to, if you don't want me to call on you, just keep your microphone on mute. And I know sometimes you may have to mute for background noise and everything. I may have to do that too. So feel free to unmute when you don't have background noise, or if you want to say something, feel free to speak up freely. You don't have to wait to be called on. Feel free to have conversations back and forth with each other. I won't be moderating it that closely, but what I'll probably try to do is I'll watch for, I'd like to watch for the, as this is an ongoing conversation, I want to kind of watch for people who don't speak as frequently or as long. And I'll try to make sure I prompt them, give them an opportunity to speak, because I know sometimes it's challenging to just jump into a conversation if you're not someone who's used to doing that. But of course, we feel like your perspective is still valuable and we want to hear what you have to say. So we have a tie-in with Rotary. The 478 is what we call it, the 4-way test, the 7 sustainability goals, and the 8 pillars of positive peace. And we're going to use that as something that we can fall back on in our conversation. If we get into a sticky place, if we get into a place where there's maybe something, challenging that we have to work through in the conversation, we have the Rotary 4-way test, which is pretty helpful. It's 4 questions. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? We can use those questions to evaluate just about anything. And it's something that you can keep in mind as you're listening, or it's something that we can call on if we get in a sticky place. So moving on to, I think that might be everything that I have. So at this point, Dawn, is there anything that I missed that that you would like to share? And is there any way that you would like to kick off our conversation on sustainability, especially in the realm of individual and corporate political responsibility?
No, I think you did a great job, but I'm ready to dive right in. Earlier in the week, Anna and I had been discussing sustainability as how it regarded agricultural and other topics, and I thought that was really interesting. Really got me thinking about a lot of that, and if everybody's interested, I'd like to explore that area.
Absolutely. So sustainability related to agriculture, and
well, I think Anna, correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess food in all areas, because so much of what there's been a lot of coverage about. I think a lot of people, when they first think about sustainability, it's more about transportation and electricity and things like that. But food production is a huge producer of carbon in the current way we do it. Yeah. And I think that's fascinating, because that is something that's a topic that can become emotionally charged pretty easily, because we are what we eat. And I think that all the supply chain issues that we've seen in the last few months have really pointed out, how fragile some of that is, and how much we rely on transportation to get the food that we eat. Also, how oil intensive a lot of farming practices are. And there's been a lot of discussion. I know this week at COP26, there's been a lot of discussion about how to mitigate the methane that is produced from production of animal products. And then Anna brought up, I guess, you know what, I'm gonna, I brought it up. How about I stop talking then?
Yeah. So one of my main concerns with mass agriculture, especially in corporation, is water sustainability, especially between animal products. It's a lot different than how we do it here in Northern Michigan, where a lot of people don't go out and buy beef. They hunt for their beef, but they would usually say venison. And it's a lot different than what I read in the newspapers about water conservation and raising animal products and huge farm fields. And I think that there is definitely a way that we could reduce how much water we use while still being able to maintain animal products. Sorry, that's my cat. So, Don, what do you think about that?
I agree. I think that, you know, I keep going back to so much where we are right now. It's got to be an all hands on deck approach. And so much of the time, I think a lot of times the media, because of the way of their constraints, they frame things in a way that it's a binary decision. And of course, that makes it easy for the different sides of politics to politicize, you know, that someone suggested that we maybe cut back on something that they're proposing, that the government does away with meat. That's a little extreme. I think that there's no question that in this part of the country, we're more familiar with cattle and somewhat pork production. Most pork production is north of us, but there's a lot of cattle being raised in Kansas, and there's definitely more sustainable methods. The problem is that I think when it comes to keeping the prices low, animal production has always been, it's always water intensive, because to make a pound of beef takes hundreds of gallons of water. And just the logistics of having enough cattle in one place to have beef production is very, very harsh for the environment. You know, the old joke in Kansas is, you smell a feedlot 20 minutes before you see it, because there's an acronym called CAFO, Corporate Agricultural Feeding Operation. And what that is a huge facility where they bring thousands of head of cattle and feed them up for in anticipation of processing. And so historically, that was always that was not as efficient as it is now, because they would actually transport live cattle to areas like Kansas City or Chicago, where the slaughterhouses and the meat processing plants were. And over the years, they have made that more efficient, and a lot of it is now located in more rural parts of the country, but it's still very water intensive. I think one of the challenges with free range animals, it takes a lot of land, and it takes a lot of water to raise one head of cattle. So I think there are a lot of challenges. There's definitely a lot of progress that's been done to try to reduce the amount of water necessary, and also to require the treatment of of the water that is used to produce cattle. And there's all sorts of mitigation, methane capture methods. You might have heard about some of that in the news. But I think it's doable. It's a real challenge, and I think it would definitely add to the cost of meat production. And now that's just beef we're talking about, because pork and chicken it's his own thing, but I think it's still that's still a definite issue.
Yeah, I think you talking about polluted water made me rethink of something that I recently learned about some of the water here in Michigan. So what's been going on is, if you're familiar with the project that I did, we were talking about benthic algae, and we did an assessment on them and why they're growing so much. But there has been a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus pollutants from agriculture and farming that has flowed into Torch Lake, which has then fueled the diatoms and the algae to grow more, which has then polluted the water more, which the water harder on the plants that they're using in the agriculture. So it's kind of a big circle that's going around. But also, I do think it's doable too. I think that's a really good point that you made. And I think a lot of people think of it like how we think of animal cruelty in the science field, a necessary evil. Like it's just something that's going to happen because we need this, but I don't think it's the same way. And I think it's completely different. We have the technology to not use oil and coal in fueling machines and products. We have the solar energy. We have windmills that have proven to be effective and cheaper in the long run. So I guess I would like to hear a different opinion on why it is those are still there. I want a really solid reason for that I've never understood why.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Anna? Why methods of energy production of fossil fuel are still there? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not necessarily in, small backyard gardens, but in huge corporations where they have the facilities and the resources to be using these more sustainable methods. However, they stick to traditional methods.
Price.
That is a very big reason.
Yeah. Gosh, I hate to take over, but I listened to a really interesting discussion yesterday about the supply chain, and a lot of it I think has to do with exactly what we're talking about right now, is that to tie sustainability back to democracy, to money in politics, the short-term gain for corporations traditionally has always outweighed any other benefits to society. And even though we as consumers say we don't have any say over that, a lot of that is driven by demand. And we don't have time today to talk about all the how all this is all connected, but it really is, because Zachary and I were talking about this earlier in the week. The potato industry, because of the fast food industry, is totally unsustainable, because it's become a Frankenstein of monocrop. There is a single strain of Idaho russet potato that is produced in huge quantities to supply the fast food industry, because, you know, unless you say otherwise, every fast food meal includes French fries. And to keep those prices down, they rely heavily on fossil-based fertilizers and fossil-based pesticides. And I love French fries more than anybody. But I mean, that's just one example of, you know, how do you address that? Because, you know, sustainably grown heirloom potatoes, we could shift to that. We could absolutely shift to that. But there are so many forces at work that I think it's got to come from demand, but just like democracy, it requires education. And I think there's a huge slice of the population that does not have the luxury of even thinking about it, much less acting on whether or not you know, how they affect the industry. But that, I think, a lot, the going back to how democracy ties into all of this, that portion of democracy is, you know, consumer demand and consumers demanding more from the corporations that supply the products.
Absolutely. If a company, a corporation has one thing to do, and that's deliver profits to owners and shareholders, then they're going to do that, and they're going to keep buying the cheap, you know, fossil fuels that are, you know, polluting our planet. And, you know, companies need to be motivated in whatever way motivates them to include layers of stewardship in their mission as well. And that can only happen if shareholders and owners and customers and public consumers, you know, ask them to, demand it. And so that's one tiny tentacle of what I think has to be done. And I disagree with one thing Don said. I like French fries more than he does.
I accept the challenge, whatever that.
Very good. Thank you all for sharing about that. Well, and I think that gets into what I'm, you know, interested in based on the conversation that you've all had, is it feels like we are in consensus that there needs to be a shift. And so now, you know, in this conversation, I would say, what is, Gary, you were touching on it. How does that shift occur? Do we have any ideas for how that shift can occur? Where is it sounds like from what you're saying, Gary, I'm taking that it needs to be a full press. Everyone, all from all angles, we need to I guess put the pressure on these corporations or ask, or, you know, demand this. But are there any other thoughts of how we implement that, how we approach that, and I don't know where it might be most meaningful for us to apply that kind of attention. And I open it up to anyone who wants to speak to that. Or Anna, if there's anything that you wanted to touch on that maybe we didn't cover, feel free to speak up.
I was just kind of waiting for somebody else to answer.
Yeah.
the my issue is that I think that if we were to demand it, there wouldn't be as much demanding as there would be people still consuming. So the majority would most likely win. Um, so I think it comes back to actually what Don said about education. Sustainable education is really important. I know that when I was in my ninth grade earth science, we learned about water resources, water management, um, how that can go downhill. Same with forest management, how delicate natural resources are.
Mm.
And I think where it all begins, not demanding to the actual corporations.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And so education of people, of the consumers and all the people who grow up to also, run these corporations and everything too. How, so that was ninth grade, you said. Is that ninth grade is where you learned that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we had a great teacher who really enjoyed nature and, again, the natural resources. And I think we just need more people like that who are thankful for the world and the resources and realize how fragile they can be and how quickly they can diminish. I don't think that we have much potential in changing the minds of 70-year-olds who still go out and get McDonald's every day. I think that will be a very difficult task, um, especially in rural and poor parts of America, um, where fast food is the cheapest opportunity. They can't go on a strike and not buy that.
Mhm.
I feel like education is the only way out of it,
Mhm.
but that's my opinion.
I agree that that is a huge component because our whole system is based on nothing that we're doing right now is permanent, but it's been in place so long that it would be hard to change. And one of the Gary and I are of the age that when they finally came out, they finally figured out that smoking was bad for you. The Surgeon General determined that it was probably too late to try to convince anyone who was already who had been smoking since they were 10 years old and they were in their 70s. So they had a big push in the schools to explain the dangers of nicotine and tobacco. And it was hell on earth for my parents for a couple of years, because every day we'd come home from school and we'd shame my parents into that they were going to kill themselves. And this predates secondhand smoke, so it was just that, but it was highly effective because education at a younger age is very important, and that's a big challenge, because this gets back to the four-way test. What do you the interconnectedness of all of us, I think, is so important to teach, and how every action that each one of us takes does have some effect. From a more global standpoint, there's been lots of talk about pricing carbon as one method. Well, that's not anything that an individual can do other than to other than to be educated about, exactly what effect carbon has in the atmosphere, and what it does to the, to our climate and our weather, and also the fact that it's a global issue. If one, if we export our carbon pollution, it doesn't get rid of it. It just moves it to a different part of the atmosphere, but we all share the same atmosphere. And I know there was a lot of talk this week at the COP26 about a world carbon tax. And that's a really tough discussion, because more of the poorer countries are saying, well, wait a minute, you guys put all this carbon in the air for the last few decades, but you're telling us that we have to do something differently. And so by putting a price on carbon, I think is one way, not only for, it detracts from exporting carbon pollution just to another part of the world, but it also, I think, puts an incentive for corporations to think about, okay, if I use this this one method, it's going to cost me more because I'm going to have to pay for the carbon that I'm producing. And we can get it, it gets real complicated real fast about credits and trading and things like that. But that might be, that's one possible first step from a macro standpoint, that if people could think about the monetizing of carbon and treating carbon as an expense that should be built into the price of whatever's being made. So if it was cheaper in the long run to do, I don't know, what's a good example? Some organically grown vegetable. If it got parity, or if it was even cheaper than a vegetable that was grown with lots of fertilizer and pesticide, and that carbon, the price of that carbon was added in, then that's more of a free market. But that, back to Anna's point, that requires a fair amount of education.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to add, Anna, I totally agree. You can only motivate thousands of demanders when there are millions of consumers. And absolutely, if you put your focus on education, then you can, the consumers become demanders through their purchasing decisions. An example, Don, of what you're talking about is, everybody should be finding a local farmer that you can, make the place you get your meat and your eggs and so forth. Because, every trip that piece of meat didn't take on a truck somewhere, it has a huge, way smaller carbon footprint than a CAFO big lot a pound of beef. They ought to slap $2 a pound on every, exported large operation pound of ground beef to make it equalized out. Anyway, just something like that, educating people to do that. The concept of a meatless Monday and so forth. I totally agree. That's worth the effort if you can get people, because it's one small thing that any person can do.
Yeah, I think something that Don made me realize was how effective it can be making sustainability cheaper. So I know something that environmental engineers are working so hard at right now is trying to make sustainable options cheaper than traditional options, which isn't an easy task to do. But if it can be done, that's likely to switch things. But also, on what you just said, I know that whenever we go to the doctor's office, they give us tickets to the farmer's market so we can get $20 worth of things for free at the farmer's market using tickets, which is pushing people for cheaper, nearly free options local. So if that can be done, I think we are making great advancements already.
I love that, Anna. I would love to hear more about that, the ticket program. If you could share a little more about that.
So I know that they do it at women's resource centers. I know that my mom was going to get like a breast exam or something, and they give her $20 worth of little yellow tickets. So they can be used on, it's very specific things. Like you can't buy breads, but it's used for fresh fruits, fresh veggies, and that's it. Things that are usually grown in mass quantity. So not things that are like locally made apple pies. They're things that you're tempted to go out and buy a cutie from a store when you could buy a locally made orange picked from somebody's tree, which is way more environmentally friendly. Um, Also, the people are really, really nice about it because those yellow tickets cash in for the farmers market that you give them to. They cash them in the middle of winter, and then they get money during their season where they aren't growing food. It's like it really spreads out local farmers' pay so they get more year round, which I also think is really cool. I don't know if you guys have that anywhere near you, but I know that we do it all here. We do it on Cherry Street Market in Traverse City, and we do it here in Minnesota. So just a neat little thing that we have going on.
I think that's brilliant. I know that there was an attempt, and I think it's still going on through the CHIP program, which was, I guess, was formerly called food stamps, but there was a 2-for-1 credit on fresh fruits and vegetables. That doesn't address the local issue, but it allowed people who were using the CHIP program to get twice as much with their dollar. But I think, that would be a brilliant idea if you could expand that to incentivize, local farmers. It's interesting that they do it at the doctor's office because that would make sense. That I've always been amazed that that the healthcare industry seems to be totally divorced from the nutrition industry.
Yeah. I also
Anna,
know
Anna,
that
Anna, who funds that? Is it the merchants who are giving the tickets away?
I'm not sure who funds them. Um, I think it must be something to do between the doctors and the farmers market because I know that some booths don't take them. So again, it's only things that are freshly grown from the ground that are able to be sold. Yeah, I can't say much about that. I'm not sure.
And they cash those. You said they can cash those out at any time, or
They cash them in usually near like Christmas, the middle of winter, and then their money comes by like February, and then they can't start growing until late April when the
Gotcha.
snow melts.
So it helps with their cash flow. That's brilliant.
I know that something our school has been trying to do, which is really neat, is getting locally sourced fruits and veggies. So since Michigan has upped it to 1.5 cups of fruits and veggies per lunch meal, they've had to get more fruits and vegetables because of the regulation. So they have started adding food from, we have a local farmer who lives like just a few streets down from where I live. And I know he came by and he was really excited about it because he's able to grow more and he has opportunity to make more money by doing this while also supporting his local school. So
That's amazing.
yeah, so I think again, I'm very excited about all of these advancements. They make me very happy and hopeful.
Yeah, and you just got me thinking about, because everyone I know is either participates in a CSA or knows someone who does. And the potential, I know for a while there, stepping back just a little bit, was it Jamie Oliver, the chef, who was promoting gardens in public schools and funded and was a big champion of making that a huge part of education, because the ability to understand where your food comes from is so powerful if you can actually grow it yourself. I know there was talk of expanding that, but it seems like that would be if it could be done at the local level, that might incentivize kids in school to. I know that it seems like that's a big challenge, is to get people to stay in the agriculture world. And if someone developed a passion for growing fruits and vegetables at an early age because they got to experience that, wonder if that would help. You could, if you had the structure built where someone who was finishing up school was thinking about either starting their own farm or going into that, and if they could get microloans or the community could help in some way to make, if you're a local producer and there's demand from the local school, that seems like a pretty good synergy there.
I know that I've talked about a lot of my experiences already. I promise this will probably be the last one. But also during that 9th grade environmental science class, we did learn how to use hydro sources, and we grew our own vegetables in class. So we got to choose between carrots or tomatoes or peppers or cucumbers, and we got to grow them in class. And we also got to do some environmental engineering, trying to create some sort of a hydro source to water them. So students were learning all of these farming techniques, and I still remember some of them. So I think that is another thing that I would love to talk to lawmakers about and say these should be in every curriculum.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. And I want to hop in just on one thing that you said, Anna. We definitely encourage you to share from your personal experiences. That's absolutely what we want here in these conversations. So yeah, please don't hold back on that. And I appreciate everything you have shared. And I want to, Chris, I see you've hopped on, and I wanted to make sure you have a chance to chime in on sustainability. And we have a very wide-ranging conversation, but one focus is individual and corporate political responsibility and sustainability. And but if you've heard anything that sparked you, I would love to hear what you have to share.
Hi there. Sorry, I'm just getting back from driving, so I'm just hopping in recently. So I think I'm just going to listen for a few minutes, Zach, and then I would love to pop in.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
I miss you already.
Thanks.
All right. As we are coming up here on the hour, Dawn, I want to check in with you on if there's any housekeeping things we should do here at the hour, I'm definitely up for continuing the conversation longer.
I guess the only housekeeping thing I'd like to do before we stop the recording is this something we had talked about, having this on a regular every other week discussion? I'm really excited about talking about sustainability and how it ties in with all of our other all the work we're trying to do. Is that something that anyone would be against, to make it, if this was just kind of a free form, it's just going to be open every other week and you can put it on your calendar? No.
I'm up for that.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'm up for that.
So am I.
Okay, sounds good. All right, in that case, we can keep talking. I'm just going to end the recording, and we're gonna, if everybody's okay, we're gonna put this up on the Democracy in a Box YouTube.